I'm Jacob, and I'm here to talk about load testing with Gatling. Has anyone used Gatling before here? Oh, okay. Hopefully what I'm saying is right then. So, what is load testing? That was not supposed to happen. Okay, there we go. So what is load testing? Load testing is a type of non-functional performance test in which you simulate a load on your application. So what this does, it allows you to identify the behavior of your application under some load. This is quite similar to stress testing, which you may also have heard of. The difference being that in stress testing, you aim to try to break your application, see how much load it can take before the performance begins to degrade. Whereas with load testing, you're using a more typical load that you would expect your application to normally receive. So why should you bother with load testing? So first of all, it allows you to easily identify the bottlenecks that are in your application, so you can kind of focus on those and get those fixed. Related to stress testing, it allows you to identify the maximum load that your application can handle. And it also allows you to identify the responsiveness of your application. So this is quite useful if you have any service level agreements that you might need to adhere to. And all of these empower you to reduce the risk of failure in production, which is, I'm sure you all agree, a very good thing. So this brings you on to Gatling. Gatling is a framework for load testing web applications. It's written in Scala. It's based on Akka. It provides a really nice domain-specific language in Scala that you can use to write your load tests, which I'll come on to in a minute. And using this, of course, you simulate many concurrent users all hitting your application at the same time. So let's go on some scenarios. So say if we have an application in which a user can register themselves for some service, and they can log into a service. So pretty simple. So let's jump straight into Gatling. So in Gatling, we compose our load tests out of scenarios. So in order to do this, you first want to add these two imports. These imports allow us to use the Gatling DSL, domain-specific language. And once we've imported these, we can start by beginning to create our first scenario. So we start by creating a register user scenario, and we use a scenario method. This just takes any string. It's just for reference later on in the test report, so we can easily identify which scenario we are running. Then we might want to define the HTTP request. So here we say that we'd like to execute a HTTP request, and again, we give it a name for reference. And then we go on to defining the actual content of the HTTP request. So here we define that we want to make a POST request to a register endpoint with some string body, and the asJSON method just adds the content type and content length to our request. And then, of course, optionally, you can perform assertions on the response. So here we're just checking that the response returned from a server is a 200, but you can do loads of other different things with this. It's pretty cool. So once we've created our register scenario, we want to create some login scenario. Won't bother going over that. But then we can combine these scenarios together. So as you mentioned earlier, once the user's registered, they'll want to log in. So to do that, we just simply create a new scenario. We then use the exec method, and this can also take scenarios. So we simply give it our register and login scenarios, and these will be run in sequence, one after the other. And once we're happy with our scenario, we then have to specify how we want the scenario to be run. So here we say that we'd like to start running the scenario with 50 concurrent users, ramping up to 100 over a duration of 5 minutes. I've just put a graph down there to kind of demonstrate that it happens in a linear fashion over time. So once we've said how we want to run the scenario, we then have to tell Gatling where the server is, where we want to hit it, and then we simply use the setup method to start the simulation. So it's quite easy to get something up and running quite quickly. So is it practical for large applications? Yes, it really is. It's very, very easy. It's not much more complicated than that for most scenarios. And the Gatling DSL provides loads and loads of functions for almost any use case you can imagine. So on the current project I'm working on, we've actually integrated the Gatling load test with our continuous integration. So this is really cool because then we get to see performance of our application, how it changes over time with each commit. So if we introduce any major regressions, it should be quite easy to pinpoint that to a single commit. We've also actually managed to reveal some sneaky concurrency bugs in our applications that were not caught by unit testing. So that's actually, we didn't actually expect this to be a benefit of using it, but it turns out to be very useful there. And of course, going back to earlier when I was talking about benefits of load testing, you get loads of valuable insights into how your application runs when it's under load. So just to give you a quick overview of what the report looks like. So here you can see we have our different scenarios. Those are broken down into how many times they run in the simulation, broken down into successful runs and failed runs. And finally, we have the response times broken down into various forms, such as min, max, and percentile. And then here we have another one which shows the number of active users along the yellow line plotted against the response time broken down again into different percentiles, which is quite useful because this will allow you to kind of see at which point, or rather how many users your application can process before things start to slow down. So to recap, Gatling provides a domain-specific language for writing load tests. It allows you to build very complex flows using scenarios. As we showed earlier, you can combine scenarios together. And of course, it generates test reports, so you can show it to all your business people to show how amazing your applications are. Done. Thank you.